Welcome and aloha everyone. This is Dr. Michael Sala coming to you from the big island of Hawaii, and I'm pleased to announce a new article on my exopolitics.org website, Antarctic Ice Core Records Resolving Competing Pole Shift Theories. So this article is the latest in a series looking at pole shifts and crustal displacement theories, and so this article is going to be focusing on some ice core records. So I begin in the article by looking at this declassified CIA document called the Adam and Eve story, which has generated a lot of controversy over the predictions of an upcoming pole shift, also known as a crustal displacement, and catastrophic events that may sweep the planet in the near future. So this is a 57-page document that was based on a book authored by Jan Thomas in 1963. In it, Thomas proposed a pole shift scenario that was very different to that was earlier proposed by Charles Hapgood in his 1958 book, The Earth's Shifting Crust. Hapgood's theory was endorsed at the time by Albert Einstein, who proposed that the geophysical poles periodically move by as much as up to 40 degrees through crustal displacements. This phenomenon was brought about by increasing weight of the polar ice caps, which accumulate more and more ice over millennia as they eventually generate sufficient centrifugal force due to the planet's rotation to make the crust move over the mantle, as Einstein explained in the book's foreword. So the basic idea is that as the weight of the ice increases at the poles, because of the Earth's spin, the centrifugal force is going to exert a massive force on the Earth's crust, because the ice will want to move down towards the equatorial region just because of the Earth's rotation. So in the Adam and Eve story, Chan proposed that the pole shift was much greater, as much as 90 degrees, with the poles shifting into the equatorial zone in less than a day. Chan has proposed the poles would flip back and forth in this way so that Antarctica would eventually return to the South Pole region and the Arctic would do likewise. Each time the geographical poles did one of these 90 degrees flips, there would be catastrophic winds and tidal waves all over the planet, especially in the equatorial region where the Earth's spin was 1,000 miles per hour. That's how long it takes for the Earth to do one complete rotation, and because the circumference of the Earth is 24,000 miles, so 1,000 miles an hour is what it takes for the Earth to rotate for one complete day. So Thomas explained, quote, "In quarter to half a day, the poles move almost to the equator, and all hell lets loose. The atmosphere and oceans don't shift with the shell. They just keep on rotating west to east, and the equator, that speed is 1,000 miles per hour. It has to be, normally, to make one rotation per day. So while the shell shifts with the poles going toward the equator, the winds and oceans go eastward, blowing across the face of the Earth with supersonic speeds, inundating continents with water miles deep. You can see then that ice ages are not a matter of advancing and retreating ice. It's simply that different areas of the Earth are in polar regions at different times for different durations of time, with the changes between positions taking place in a fraction of a day." So that's from pages 13 to 14 in the Adam and Eve story, which you'll find on the CIA website, and the details are on this article in the links at exopolitics.org. Now, there's a video that illustrates what happens during one of these 90-degree shifts and what Thomas was proposing for what's to come. So one can easily see how devastating such a 90-degree shift could be, and why the CIA may have been motivated to suppress such information. So as you play the shift, as you play this simulation, it shows the Earth rotating around in that westerly direction, And so then you have a pole shift, and so here the crust is displacing, and in this simulation you see the north and south poles basically moving around the planet as the crust is moving over the mantle. That something causes the crust to move, and so this is what the simulation shows. And so now the Antarctic is located in the equatorial zone, as is the Arctic region. According to Ben Davidson, author of the popular Earth Catastrophe series, this flipping back and forth would address paleomagnetic studies that show that the magnetic poles have been in their present locations for millions of years. Davidson concluded that this made Thomas's pole shift theory much more compelling than Hapgood's. In fact, Davidson believed that Hapgood was putting out a limited hangout, that Hapgood actually was a CIA asset, and he was putting out the truth in a way that could later be easily discredited. So that was Davidson's take, and he obviously was much more supportive of Thomas' pole shift theory than Hapgood's. Thomas's theory was much more radical, a 90-degree pole shift as opposed to up to 40 degrees according to what Hapgood believed geological records showed. Unfortunately for Davidson, however, ice core samples from Antarctica clearly support Hapgood's theory and not Thomas's theory. Ice core samples from East Antarctica date back as much as 1.5 million years. The following diagram illustrates ice core samples taken from different Antarctic regions and show how far back in time the ice sheets date. So here on the exopolitics.org website, you see this illustration showing the different ice core samples that have been taken all over the Antarctic continent. And so it gives you the dates and the depths. So here, for example, you have some like Dome B, 700 meters that date back 30,000 years. The ones from Lake Vostok gives you again 254 meters, 200,000 years. Dome C, 900 meters, 40,000 years. Sorry, this one here from Vostok, yeah, it's 250 meters. So, but on the West Antarctic continent, or side of the continent, you see that the ice core samples are much shallower and much newer. Like here, it's 60 meters, 200 years. Again, 100 meters, 200 years. So much shallower, much younger ice core samples come from West Antarctica. So the results from the ice core samples show that East Antarctica has been covered by ice for hundreds of thousands of years, with Lake Vostok having some of the oldest discovered ice, 220,000 years. Older ice core samples than those recorded in the above have been subsequently been found both at Lake Vostok, 400,000 years, and the Dome C area, 800,000 years, as shown in NOAA records. So the Dome C is here in the East Antarctica, kind of lower southeastern region of Antarctica, and Vostok is just above it, and that's the 220,000 year ice sample, which according to this particular map, which I unfortunately I don't have the year when this was done, but there have been later samples found that show ice core samples from the Dome C area going back 400,000 and even 800,000 years. So a subsequent 2013 study asserted that ice core samples of up to 1.5 million years are most likely to be found in the Dome C area of East Antarctica. So put simply, scientists agree that East Antarctica has been covered by ice sheets for at least 1.5 million years, and likely much longer than that. In contrast, the ice core samples in West Antarctica are only a few centuries old, with only one so far matching the age of many of the East Antarctic sites. This site is in the drilling area designated Boyd, whose ice was found to be 70,000 years old, as the above map illustrates. So again, this map showed this area here in West Antarctica, the kind of lower region of West Antarctica, showing this area called Boyd, and there was an ice sample found that was 70,000 years old. So the ice core records show conclusively that much of the Antarctic continent has been located in the polar zone, latitudes greater than 66 degrees, for at least 1.5 million years, and not in the equatorial zone, that is from 0 to 23 degrees latitude, either north or south, as proposed by Thomas. Hapgood's theory offers a better explanation for why only part of Antarctica has been ice-free for significant periods. But how do we explain the 70,000-year-old ice sample found in the bird region of Antarctica? To find a definitive answer to where the geographical poles have been located and then moved via crustal displacement to new positions, preserving some but not all of the ice accumulated before the displacement, we can turn to the work of Rose and Flem Aths, authors of the book When the Sky Fell. In their really well-documented book, they used a range of archaeological and fossil records to show where ice sheets have been found over the last 100,000 years, and how these positions had changed due to crustal displacements as first proposed by Hapgood. To date, I found no other authors laying out such a compelling case for using available scientific data to track the respective positions of the geographic poles during the last 100,000 years. Their findings provide a clear explanation for the varying ages found in the ice core samples extracted from different regions of Antarctica, and why Hapgood, rather than Thomas, provides a more accurate explanation for how the crustal displacement theory works. First, I begin in the article with Flem Aths' illustration of the positions of the North and South Poles prior to 91,600 BC. It shows how the bulk of Antarctica was moved inside the Antarctic Circle, while West Antarctica lay in the temperate zone, similar to the present-day location of New Zealand. Note that the South Pole was located just east of the coast of East Antarctica at the time, while the North Pole was located in Alaska. Importantly, the Dome Sea area containing some of the oldest ice core samples found to date was located within the Antarctic Circle, thereby preserving much of the Antarctic ice sheets acquired over the previous 1.5 million years. So in the article you have this diagram that was provided by provided by Rand Flem Aths, and it shows the North Pole directly over Alaska, and the South Pole just to the east of the coastline of East Antarctica. So this was the positions of the North and South Pole prior to 91,600 BC, when there was a crustal displacement. So there was a crustal displacement at that time that moved the poles from this location that we see here. So this is from page 83 from the Rand and Rose Flem Aths book, When the Sky Fell. So the next diagram shows the Antarctic continent in relation to South Pole after a crustal displacement led to a pole shift around 91,600 BC. Consequently, during the period from 91,600 BC to 50,600 BC, much of the lower region of West Antarctica along the Transantarctic Mountains lay within the Antarctic Circle, while the Palmer Peninsula and significant areas of East Antarctica lay within the temperate zone. So this is what the map shows us, provided by Rand Flem Aths. Once again, the physical South Pole was located over the ocean rather than the Antarctic continent, this time off the coast of West Antarctica, adjacent to the Ross Sea. The geophysical pole had moved approximately 40 degrees from the coast of East Antarctica to just off the West Antarctica coast during the 91,600 BC pole shift. So here in the diagram you can see that the North Pole has moved from off directly over Alaska to now over the Hudson Bay region, while the South Pole has moved from just off the coast of East Antarctica to now being just off the coast of West Antarctica, particularly just west of the Ross Ice Shelf as it currently exists. So this is very close to what Hapgood had proposed was the crustal displacement that would occur during a pole shift. Significantly, it is far less than the 90-degree pole shift claimed by Thomas. So, Thomas basically claimed that the poles would move back and forth from the equatorial regions to their present locations. But that's not what we are seeing with the geological records as the Flem Aths have been able to show. Importantly, the Dome Sea area remained entirely within the Antarctic Circle, thereby preserving the ancient ice sheet. Furthermore, the Bird area where the 70,000-year-old ice sample was found had been moved from its prior location in the temperate zone prior to the 91,600 BC pole shift to deep inside the Antarctic Circle. This allowed the accumulation of ice to begin, thereby accounting for the estimated range. So if you look at this map, you can see that this area called Dome Sea was still within the Antarctic Circle. So the ancient ice there that dated back as much as 1.5 million years, would be preserved. Whereas the Dome Sea area, this now was located within the Antarctic Circle. So thus the accumulation of ice began in the area of the Bird region where this sample of 70,000-year-old ice sample was first taken. So this gives us a way of explaining why it is, or how this sample of 70,000 years could be dated to this period, and why it began from this age, because this frankly was when West Antarctica was located within the Antarctic Circle, but the Palmer Peninsula and the rest of half of West Antarctica, the rest of it, was located in the temperate zone. And so this was a very warm period for portions of the Palmer Peninsula. So the next pole shift occurred around 50,600 BC, and an illustration was again provided by the Flem Aths that shows the approximate locations of the poles from 50,000 to 50,600 BC to 9,600 BC. Around 50,600 BC, the South Pole had flipped back to the other side of the Antarctic continent, where it again lay just off the coast of East Antarctica. So this was an approximate 30-degree pole shift, which is again consistent with Hapgood's estimate of the cyclic crustal displacements that the Earth undergoes. It's important to emphasize that the 50,600 BC pole shift was far less than the 90-degree pole shift predicted by Thomas's theory. Most of the East Antarctica was again located inside the Antarctic Circle, both preserving the ancient ice sheets and allowing them to expand. The Bird region, containing the 70,000-year-old ice core sample, was now located just outside the Antarctic Circle. Its marginal position just inside the temperate zone, which would allow the Bird region to preserve the bulk of its ice sheets, similar to the glaciers of southern New Zealand. So here you have the diagram that shows the North Pole moving directly over the Hudson Bay region, and the South Pole again being off the coast of East Antarctica, but this time down a little further southeast along the just off the east coast. So the east coast of Antarctica, where you have Dome Sea, where you have Lake Vostok, where all of the ancient ice has been located for over 1.5 million years, was still inside of this of the Antarctic Circle. But now you can see virtually all of the West Antarctica being outside of the Antarctic Circle, being located in a temperate zone. And the bird region, which the 70,000-year-old ice sample was found, is just outside the Antarctic Circle. So certainly it would still be cold there, enough to allow a lot of that ice to remain for thousands of years. So the period from 50,600 BC to 9,600 BC is significant, since it corresponds to the last time major portions of the Antarctic continent lay outside of the polar circle. The bulk of West Antarctica lay in the temperate zone, and the coastal area would therefore have been ice-free. Significantly, the West Antarctica's coastline and interior would have been navigable, just as the 1513 Peri-Reis map showed. So in the following diagram, the Peri-Reis map is superimposed over a map of the globe showing how the Antarctic coastline of the Palmer Peninsula, from the tip of the Palmer Peninsula all the way down its eastern flank to East Antarctica, was known to ancient sea captains. So here you have a map of the globe, and in the pink, in the kind of violet, you have the outline of what the coastline of the Peri-Reis map. So it showed the coastline of North America and South America. This was back in 1513, which was well before the discovery of the Americas, or the mapping of the Americas. Columbus went there, what was it, 1496. Peri-Reis map was based on much older maps than anything Columbus had relied on. In fact, Columbus may have relied on the Peri-Reis map to kind of like discover the Americas. So the Peri-Reis map shows the coastline of Africa, of kind of like northwest Africa, the Americas pretty well, and then it continues down, and that portion that was kind of like traced by Hapgood and showed to be the Palmer Peninsula going down the eastern side of the Palmer Peninsula down towards East Antarctica. So it was quite remarkable, and it showed that at some point ancient sea captains were able to navigate the coastline of Antarctica, especially the Palmer Peninsula area. And that's important because the Palmer Peninsula, all this region of West Antarctica and some portions of East Antarctica, as the map showed that according to Rand Flem Aths, it was located in the temperate zone. So also vital to understand is that in this period from 50,600 BC to 9,600 BC, this corresponds to the Atlantean civilization that Plato wrote about in his famous dialogues, Critias and Timaeus. Plato explained that Atlantis' extensive island system and waterways deep into its interior, and how it was the hub for a mighty empire that ruled over much of Africa, Europe and Asia. So Plato basically described Atlantis as being this island chain. And this is pretty much what the Peri-Reis map was showing us about the coastline of Antarctica. That according to Rand Flem Aths, the Atlantis was an island chain, was an archipelago. So this finally takes us to the 9600 BC pole shift that led to the entire Antarctic continent being moved to wholly inside the Antarctic Circle. The magnitude of the Earth crustal displacement moving the South Pole from its previous location just off the East Antarctic coast to its present location was approximately 20 degrees. Again, that was significantly less than what Thomas was proposing in his crustal displacement theory. The Flem Aths contend that Atlantis was located in Antarctica, and that the remnants of this legendary lost civilization today lie under the West Antarctic ice sheets. This is consistent with what several whistleblowers and insiders have been revealing concerning the discovery of a flash frozen civilization under the ice sheets. And so there have been a number of insiders that have said that there have been excavations of these ruins found under the ice sheets, and this is going to be announced very soon in some kind of disclosure announcement. And so what we are seeing here with the data that I'm presenting based on the material from the Flem Aths is that those remnants, those artifacts found under the Antarctic ice sheets, especially in West Antarctica, actually come from Atlantis. So if the Flem Aths and others are right, that Plato's Atlantis is buried under the Antarctic ice, this gives us a means of estimating the devastation that would be caused by a crustal displacement of approximately 20 degrees. It would be sufficient to wipe out the coastal regions all over the globe, such as the low-lying archipelagos, such as Atlantis, but allow those living in elevated or mountainous regions to survive the subsequent tsunamis, earthquakes, and hurricanes accompanying a pole shift. When ice core samples are examined in relation to what we know about Earth crustal displacement theories proposed by Hapgood and Thomas, they lead to a clear conclusion. The examination of ice core samples from different parts of Antarctica support Hapgood's theory that Earth crustal displacements happen periodically and involve pole shifts of up to 40 degrees. The Flem Aths book, When the Sky Fell, gives us a means of tracking the most significant pole shifts over the last 100,000 years and illustrates how these have occurred in a manner that is consistent with what ice core samples tell us. Thomas' theory that the Earth regularly experiences 90-degree pole shifts that flip the poles back and forth from equatorial regions is not supported by Antarctic ice core records. What is comforting to know is that the Earth is unlikely to experience anything like the cataclysmic 90-degree pole shift predicted by Thomas. It is sobering to know that even a 20-degree pole shift devastated the worldwide Atlantis civilization 11,600 years ago. So, basically here, Thomas's theory of a 90-degree shift is very unlikely. The ice core records don't support it, which is good because that's a pretty devastating theory if it was correct. But even a 20-degree pole shift was enough to devastate Atlantis 11,600 years ago. The likelihood that we will soon experience a pole shift due to another crustal displacement caused by solar activity, cosmic rays, collapse of the Earth's magnetic field, activity from the Earth's core, and or a rapid melt-off of the West Antarctica appears to be quite high, as I've suggested in previous articles examining Davidson's Earth catastrophe series. So in the further reading, you see some of these earlier articles. Cosmic rays as triggers for solar flashes. Massive pole shifts are cyclic according to declassified CIA document. Impending solar flare flash. The coming solar flash and the so these are some other articles that discuss the idea of solar flashes. But these are articles in the further reading connect to the series of articles by Ben Davidson. So what does all this tell us? My article concludes, this calls for an unprecedented level of transparency by governments in sharing data about Antarctica's history, what is known about prior pole shifts, and the disclosure of suppressed technologies that would enable the bulk of humanity to prepare and escape from impending cataclysmic events. So the data that I've presented is showing that this is something that is coming. And rather than keeping our heads in the sand, We need to share the data. We need to help people prepare. We need to encourage, demand that governments release their data, release the information they know about these prior pole shifts, about what happened to Atlantis, so that we can prepare through the release of these technologies that could really be life-changing and can save many lives, and help us prepare and escape from whatever is happening. So thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can go to my exopolitics.org website to get the links that I've been referring to in this article. So thanks for listening and subscribing. This is Dr. Michael Sala signing off. Aloha.